Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling Shutdown Culture, a political dead end, but emotionally satisfying for climate left labor activists. So that's a list of different kinds of activists. So anyway, climate left labor. Um, this is in part a reflection on a recent trip I took to take part in a climate protest at the Congressional Baseball Game, Now or Never. But it's not, that was just a trigger for some thinking I've done in the past, but it became very obvious to me that there's a hurdle that people are creating in their activism by the use of shutdown. So, and this is not just in this action. There's all over the left and the current left. There are people who say shut it down as being their kind of ultimate cry of criticism and protest against institutions, against practices, against whatever, and so they say shut it down, or we're going to shut it down, or and so this is part of a long history of different forms of slightly, often grandiose claims by left activists, or at least there's assurance, there's self-reassurance that goes on that's saying what we're doing is so powerful, we are so powerful that we can shut things down, or our ideas, or our moral outrage is so huge that we can shut things down, that things will shut down. And so the question comes to, so why would you want to shut things down? Well, obviously they're saying it's bad, it's very bad, it's evil, so you shut it down and you've done something good by shutting something down. So, and now this goes even to the labor movement. So I'm not just talking about middle class, often middle class, and it's not usually not only middle class, but climate activists or people involved in various issues that are maybe not bread and butter issues. But for instance, even Amazon, Chris Smalls calls himself on Twitter, shut down Amazon. So this shutdown language is widespread. It's in the new labor movement. Chris Smalls is one of the leading heroes and he is a hero of the new, labor movement that has sprung up in the last couple of years. And so, it's this idea of shutting things down is widespread, and I think people should know what I'm about to say, and it should be obvious. And I might seem pedantic because you say, well, of course I know that. But it needs to be said that it's usually you're to the outsider, to someone who's not in your movement, it may not be something that they want. So if you're part of a movement that wants to grow in power and strength, you want to be demanding things that everybody wants. But shutting things down is not necessarily what everybody wants. It tends to be something that maybe if you are part of a small group that feels left out or feels like destroying things will give you satisfaction, or shutting them down. It's a very similar thing to the defund the police idea. That's shutting down the police, if you might say, or abolitionism. So this is all talking about the destructive element, or the negative element, or the taking away element of what your demands are, the prohibitive element. I've once wrote a piece about prohibitive and injunctive demand. So injunction is something that you should do, and prohibition is something you shouldn't do. So this falls in the prohibitive area when you are saying these people shouldn't be doing these things, we're going to shut them down, or this company should shut down, or this the practice should shut down. And so now this Congressional Baseball Game, I don't want to dwell too much on the details of that because it's not. It's just another example of this same phenomenon. It's not. It's the expression, in my opinion, of a movement that doesn't have a imagination that is captivating for people outside the movement, an imagination of a world, a compelling vision, a visionary movement. It's the cry of a non-visionary movement. It's the cry of a movement pressed against the wall and trying to make itself appear big and strong by saying, I am going to shut things down. I'm going to do stuff that, and also just so reviewing, it depends on the situation, but actually, this is not a secret. I've tweeted at Chris Smalls. I don't know if you read it. He's a public figure with a large following, but I question his use of the word "shut down Amazon" as being his Twitter handle. And I said, look, I support you, what you're doing, in terms of organizing Amazon, and but when you come into negotiation with Amazon, you don't want to be shutting Amazon down. You are going to be part of the bargaining unit, or you're going to be representing the bargaining unit that doesn't want Amazon to shut things down, that wants Amazon to succeed, but you're also your workers, the bargaining unit, to succeed as well. That you will share in the success of the company. That's not a particularly radical idea, but it happens to be the mission of a trade union, at least traditional trade unions as they exist in the United States, and the business element of even a radical trade union that also has a socialist vision, a vision of a radically transformed society, which we don't have much of at all in our labor movement. So, but anyway, in the climate movement, we have chants that say, we're going to shut this down. It flows often as part of the sort of the quote unquote common sense of a demonstration or a movement, that is in the streets, an extra parliamentary element of the climate movement or whatever. It's saying like, we're trying to shut something down. And I'm not against doing that if you have a plan and if people understand what you mean by shutting something down. Now, people assume, I think, in the climate movement that people understand it, but I don't think they do. And I don't think people who actually yell these things always understand what the context is. So, number one, if you actually want to shut something down, as temporarily, you want to create a situationist moment, a moment where you're freeing the imagination for people to imagine a different world. So if you are actually capable of shutting something down, if your movement is strong enough, if you're clever enough to shut something down, we were not last weekend clever enough to shut down the Congressional Baseball Game. We made some stir. We caused some commotion in different areas around the very, very large venue, the Nationals Park. It's a big Major League Baseball venue. And we reported on it, and the reporting is in a way magnified what we did far more than what actually happened at the ballpark. But which is fine. But the actual demand of shutting things down should be paired with an ideology, if you do want to do that, of having this moment of where the imagination is freed, essentially a revolutionary moment, okay, or a quasi-revolutionary moment, or a pre-revolutionary moment that will lead eventually to revolutionary change, where you say, things are stopped now, and we were going to unchain you from your everyday routine, and we're going to say, think about this thing. And I see some activists actually in Europe doing that more successfully now than at least some of the North American activists that I've seen do it, in part because of the structure of the cities in Europe and the way population is concentrated and the way those protests at least are structured. Now they're not these people who do, they either they glue themselves to paintings or they block roadways and so forth and so on. But they've come to be known broadly in those societies, like in Italy and in Germany and in Great Britain, as being at least troublemakers, if not sincere activists with a real important message. And they, and many of them are, there's all kinds of criticisms about, that you're inconveniencing other people, you're targeting the wrong people, so forth and so on. These are interesting conversations to have. But overall, there is this message that is the actions correspond to at least they've made it in rhetoric, if not in reality correspond to the message. The message is getting out. It's not just shutting something down. It's not just people understand what it's about. Okay, at least in my opinion, more so than what I've observed so far in North America. I mean, with some exceptions, there are some very big anti-pipeline protests and so forth and so on that really combined the action with the goal and made it clear by what people were doing, what was happening, and so the messaging was in concert with the goal. But the overall attachment to shutting things down as something that is transparent and people know what you're talking about, and they know that you really mean well, and you're really with them. Okay, you're in some fundamental cosmic way. You're with them with their need to survive, with the need for our life world to survive our current disastrous, devastating economy / misuse of that world, and pumping out all these emissions into the environment that will make our planet uninhabitable pretty soon. So all of that that communication needs to happen every time one does something that looks like a shutdown, that one doesn't just necessarily try to shut something down and expect people to understand what you mean. You have to be very, very explicit and very clear. And in a way, this protest, just to reflect on what happened in Washington, is our group was this team that was trying to yell and put out a sign, a banner, or a series of signs that created a message that this was a climate emergency. We were yelling, and at first we were yelling things that I thought were not as powerful as they might be and as relevant as they might be to the people around us. Okay, so people understood us. We first started talking in the foreign language or the subcultural language of this shutdown culture. And at the end, in a way, so we did this because there was a rainstorm coming. We were out in the bleachers. We were not, we were in air. We would need to either, the game was going to be disrupted. Probably many spectators would be leaving when this rainstorm came. So we were, pushed into action to do our standing up, unfurling our signs and yelling. And at the end of that, in a way, creativity overcame the staleness of this shutdown message, and the lack of progression that the shutdown. So one of the problems with shutdown is that people need to live in the world, And the point of shutting things down is to create a better life world, better way to live. And if you're just shutting things down, it's like there's no message about, well, how are we supposed to live? How are we supposed to do things? How are we supposed to do what you want? For instance, even to quote unquote shut down the fossil fuel industry. How are we going to do that shutting down? And so, and that is something that needs to be made explicit, and we need to have explicit demands. I will talk about in another video, but what those demands should be right now. But or an example of what they should be. But anyway, that toward the end of this time, we started improvising and getting into an actual physics. Like we said, we are for baseball. Okay, we're literally, and look, the climate is shutting down baseball. So in a way, we were saying, this rainstorm. I mean, it was. Rainstorms happen in Washington, D.C. in July. Sudden downpours happen then. They happen all over the eastern United States. They happen now in many other places as well where they didn't used to happen. But anyway, we were then binding our message to the events and also to the interests of the people sitting in the stands and even the players on the field who are Congress people and senators. But saying, like, you love baseball, we got to preserve baseball. So that moment of creativity was more like a language that was alive, and it was connected to other people, and it was connected to the situation, rather than saying, we're going to shut this down. This is, part of a ritual of shutting things down, okay? Or claiming that you're shutting things down with the assumption that people know, of course we intend all the best. We know what shutting down really means and so forth, but they don't. People don't. They see people saying, young people or older people, whoever it is, they see people saying, we want to shut it down. We're shutting this down, and also in a way that's grandiose. Okay, the claim is often a small group is saying we're going to shut something down. Look, if you have tens of thousands of activists, you could potentially shut something down, or even 5,000 activists, or 2,000, or 1,000. We didn't have those numbers at this Congressional Baseball Game. You might have a chance of doing that shutting down if you wanted to do that, if that was your mission, and if you had a clear message of what you wanted to happen. But the point is not the shutting down. The point is to drive change, and to drive change forward, and to convince other people that they too should be agents. They're not with you right now, but they would be with you right now. They hear you and they feel like that's good. They're good people. They're doing good things. I'm with them. Meanwhile, the shutdown message is I think you say it's truculent. Anyway, it's a spoiled, angry message, in my opinion, of saying, resentful message saying, I don't like this thing, shut it down, it bothers me, it's wrong, I'm right. We're a small group, but we're so magically right that we're going to shut things down by just saying shut down, or by being a small group that tries, a civil disobedience. And that, so that grandiosity is a big turnoff for most people. There's some people who are attracted to it. They think, oh, great, I love that that idea of being this sort of group that is shutting things down, so forth and so on. But anyway, so I think that the point I'm trying to make is that we need a message that involves people more, that brings people along, even if you have a very strong moral objection that seems extreme and seems disjunct from the society you live in. You want to create a compelling case for your anger and your upsetness, and you also want to create a path that people feel like, yes, I can live my life to some degree, but under different conditions and so forth and so on. Or you are showing a path how you to live a better life, not just stopping things, not just shutting them down. So, and that, so I mean, I think I think I will have convinced here people who have a feeling that this is the wrong way to go, and other people who feel attached to the shutdown messaging and have grown up with it will think I'm, an asshole for having, brought this up, or I'm presumptuous. I happen to be a boomer. I happen to be a very, very young boomer, but still, who doesn't get this culture, this new culture of activism. But let me tell you, it's not very different than the culture of activism of people either older than me or people who are my age and so forth and so on, of people who get involved in their movement and create a language that is inaccessible in terms of its meaning to other people. And it becomes a private language, a language that isn't communicative. And as I was saying in this demonstration, we actually broke out of that language just spontaneously to some degree. But I think we should start out with a language that is already broken out of that stale language. And some of that is, so focusing more specifically on climate change and on what's going on in the politics of climate in the United States right now. We have a super corrupt Congress and government, with a few exceptions, and they tend to be, they're not grasping the climate emergency. They're not trying to enact measures that are commensurate with the climate emergency. And we need, though, to be super, super explicit about the steps, even in demonstrations, in this small congressional group that would be serious about climate, super, super explicit, even though some of it's wildly out of step with the neoliberal consensus of the last, like, for instance, nationalize, I'll talk about this in another video, nationalize the fossil fuel industry and dismantle it, create a super grid, a renewable energy super grid throughout the United States and North America. All these things are necessary steps that require an imagination of something different, even though it may be too technological for some people, or too political, too detailed. But literally, that's where we need to stand. We need to be making that part of this emotional language that is not just about what I'm seeing is more emotionally satisfying for a very small group of people, but is about, making the big societal changes start to address the emotional needs of activists, but also people around them who understand or who have different perspectives on the world, and they're not just want to say stop, stop, stop. They want to actually do something that leads to a change in their lives, a change in other people's lives, that's dynamic, that's future looking, that's not just about, let's stop the bad stuff we're doing now, let's do the good stuff and stop the bad stuff. So anyway, I think I'll return to this at some other point in the future, but right now I just want to stop here and let people comment in the comment section. Also, if you thought this was a worthwhile topic to bring up, please like the video, even if you may disagree with me. And also, if or not, you can dislike it too. But also, if you think Politics 2100 has something to say, please subscribe to this channel, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.